Hey guys, thanks for coming back to my channel. I'm Graham. Today I thought I'd talk a little bit about mezzotint prints, kind of what they are and how I go about starting one. So first thing you do is you'd have a sketch of what you want to create a print of. And then the next step is preparing the copper plate, basically rocking the plate. So let's get into that. So the tools of the trade, you have mezzotint rockers. So basically, this is what one looks like. Kind of like a chisel. Rockers come with different tooth counts. So this one is a 100 tooth count. A small one over here, it's a 85 tooth count. My suggestion is to get the widest one you can possibly afford, because the wider it is, the less passes across the copper plate you're going to have to make, which will save you time in the end. I also have a pole rocker, it's called, which I'm going to get into in a minute. But quickly I'll just show you how you rock a plate. And also, I'll put some links down below on some really good tutorials and kind of the history behind mezzotints if you're curious. So here we have a standard copper plate. I use the cheapest copper that I can find because it doesn't really matter if it has a couple scratches or it's not the best surface quality, because you're going to be basically rocking the entire surface. So when you rock the surface, you take this tool and you rock back and forth in passes across the plate. You do it this direction, rotate, do it this direction, rotate. And you do that throughout the entire plate. So you can imagine it takes quite a bit of time. So once you're done rocking the plate, you have a piece of copper that's covered with hundreds, thousands of tiny little pockets and burrs that the ink then gets stuck into when you apply ink to it. And so you can do a small plate. You know, this is a small guy, Kurt Vonnegut, it's a 2x3. The print in my first video is going to be a 5x7. You can even do bigger plates. This guy is 12x18. If you zoom in, you can kind of, it's hard to see the detail of the plate here. There you go. So after you've rocked the entire plate, you'd essentially, if you inked it up and ran it through a printing press, you would have a solid black image. So you have to use scrapers and burnishing tools. So for example, this is a scraper. And you just go into your plate and you scrape away those burrs. And as you scrape away, it goes from dark to light and you end up with a final image. So this small 2x3 Ginsberg plate, once I ink it, run it through the press with paper, comes out looking like that. And it still needs some more work. This is just a kind of a first proof. So the real purpose of this video is kind of how to make mezzotint rocking go a whole lot quicker. So if you look at the pattern that's created when you rock a plate by hand like that, you see it's very jagged, different gaps in between each row, and it takes a long time to get a consistent, solid coverage. So there are some mezzotint rockers that you can buy that work pretty good. There's a wood handle one, maybe like 18 inches long, that you can just rock back and forth. And it does a fairly decent job. So I did some research and found a couple other people that made their own rockers. They're called pole rockers. Usually out of like a wooden pole, you mount the mezzotint rocker on the end of it. And you can see there's a couple holes that you can bolt onto things. And so I decided I'd try to make one myself. And so I went to the hardware store, and I'd say under $15 worth of material, I had my own pole rocker. So I'll show you that. All right, and so here's the rocker. It's about 3 feet long. So starting at the top of it here, you have a couple weights, which you can get. Most places that sell rockers also sell the weights. We have the mezzotint rocker itself. This is a 100 tooth count, so it's 100 teeth per inch, and I believe this one is 6 inches wide. It's basically the widest one I could afford. It's simply just mounted onto a metal flange, adapter to go to the different pipe sizes, and then this is just a steel pipe. And that's basically it. The other part is this eye bolt mounted to a piece of wood. So I used to have this drilled through the desktop itself at my old studio, but to make it more portable and easy to get out of the way, I have it mounted to this board and then just a clamp to secure it. And there you have it. The board clamped onto the desk with the rocker running right through it. You want to be careful with the teeth of the rocker because they're easy to chip off. So one thing you want to always do is make sure you bevel the edges of your copper plate, so when it hits the edge you don't chip off teeth. I think all of my rockers have at least 1 or 2 teeth that are chipped out, and you can see it when you rock it. There'll be just a little gap all the way through the plate. Usually when you rock different directions it'll take care of itself. So the first thing I do is I have this shelf liner that I just got at a regular hardware store. It's like a couple dollars for a whole roll. Put your copper plate on it, keeps it from sliding. Usually I mark on the plate itself with a Sharpie the different angles I want to rock, kind of as a guide to keep me on track and make it go a little smoother. Alright, to recap real quick. So the old Mezzotint rocker, put it on the plate, and you rock back and forth. Takes a really long time, really wears your arm down, get real tired of doing this real quick. Using the pole rocker, just line up the copper plate so it's in line with where you want it to be, and just rock back and forth. That's all there is to it. And you just do this for a couple hours, 4 hours, depending on the size of the plate. You can rock for 20 hours if it's a big plate. Once you're done with the pass, you just rotate the plate, do another pass. And the length of the rocker, you can do large plates. So that 12 by 18 plate, this plate over here, was done with this same rocker, and it was multiple passes for each direction of the plate, but doing it by hand, I couldn't even imagine how long that would take me. Same with this print over here. This is 9 by 12, and I rocked this one by hand before I had the pole rocker, and it took an enormous amount of time. So this is the difference between the pole rocker and doing it by hand. You can see how close and tight the pole rocker marks are, versus doing it by hand. You can see all the gaps in between. And there's a couple spots where it's really close and a couple spots where it's really far. Alright, so that about wraps up this video. If you have any questions or comments or just general feedback about the channel or what you'd like to see, leave a comment below and click subscribe to follow along. So if you hear any strange noises during the videos in the background, it's probably just Baxter. Alright, thanks.